You brought this up to me, and I completely agreed. The week 2 has kind of turned into a bit of a FCS tune-up week for a lot of different programs who play a really competitive game in week 1 will get that tune-up in week 2 if they didn't get it in week 1. So this is something that I hate about college football, and I kind of wanted to propose it to you about like how much you also don't think that this is really good for the sport. I mean, we're seeing a lot of different teams play these programs, pay them a lot of money just to put up 70, and it's just not good for the sport.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. Just the concept of the fact that like you're allowed to play at like a lower division of football and pay them money to come to your home stadium and just absolutely get destroyed. I have a good friend that is a reporter for UCF and covers the UCF team very closely. And UCF currently this week went against North Carolina A&T, which is an FCS school, and their head coach openly admitted, he said that it wasn't worth the travel or the attention that an FBS school brings, and like just the glamour of playing an FBS game, because first of all, it's not glamorous for an FCS school. They're losing by 70 points, and it's not really bringing any attention to the school. And second of all, in that game, they lost their top 3 quarterbacks. Like now for the rest of the season, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not like tuning into every NCAA football game, but like they're screwed. Like they lost their best 3 quarterbacks in that football game, and then they went away to go play a game where they were always going to lose by a ton of points. And then like again, injuries are a factor, and just so much goes into it that it doesn't really make any sense for the FCS schools besides the fact that they get money, and that's genuinely the only reason they play these games. But I just want to list off like a few scores that happened this weekend. Florida State over East Texas A&M 77-3. You have Bama over I actually have the Ohio State game pulled up here, but Ohio State 70-0, Miami 45-3. Like everybody does these games, and even to a lesser extent, like Oregon versus Oklahoma State, that's not an FCS game, but I think that it's just funny to mention 69-3. But there's a lot of schools that use week 2 as like a tune-up game, and I think it's a little bit unfair to these FCS schools that are being played. Like it's unfortunate that they do have to play these games for essentially the money, but like it just is unfair, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense, because like 72-17 at Tennessee over East Tennessee State, there's just so many examples of it just being like a terrible week of football too, obviously, to watch. Like it's just like you don't really have to turn on college football in week 2, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to realize that with how it just got out of hand this week. The Alabama score that I was looking for was against UL Monroe. They won 73-0.
USF Florida and Michigan Oklahoma, and probably maybe a couple other games, right? Like probably that just I don't have off the top of my head, probably saved the weekend. But yeah, like we're like me and you are not making this argument to say like we do. I don't like it, and I do think that a lot of teams should stop. I don't like them playing FCS teams. I think at the very least you can pay some of the teams in the group of 5 to go play them, or to have them come in and you play them. Like that might seem like a better option. And I understand taking the risk of playing like a North Dakota State, a South Dakota State, some of the great teams in FCS is like kind of a lose-lose situation, right? Oh, you didn't blow them out, then you immediately get punished for it. But it actually turns out that they're some of the best. They're better than some of the teams that are in the group of 5. Like I get the lose-lose scenario and the fact that some of these teams in the FCS definitely need the money to be able to survive. Even when you get a situation like North Carolina A&T where it just feels like it's not worth it, it's still just a factor of the sport. But like this is preseason football, right? If you have a week 2 game that's a tune-up like this, I almost want to say it shouldn't even count for the record, but it's like, where do you pick and choose, right? With South Dakota State, North Dakota, like how can you end up making that differential like piece of evidence? But like these are just, how do these count the same amount as beating, if you're LSU and you beat Clemson week 1, or Miami beating Notre Dame? Like it doesn't seem like it fits. And I will say I do actually like, if you are a team like Notre Dame and you don't play in that conference championship game under any circumstances, no matter how good you are, I do think it is at least something that you don't play an FCS team.
Yeah, I will give Notre Dame a lot of credit for that, because they don't play FCS teams, and I think that's very respectable on their part. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. It is unfortunate that it all goes down as 1-0 on your record. Obviously, they're looked at as completely different games, but like it is like when you go down a list of like a schedule, right, and you're trying to determine like schedule rankings, or like how you're going to determine those last couple playoff spots, right? this week doesn't even count. Like this, nobody will ever factor in a 73-0 Alabama over UL Monroe like win. And that's kind of the point that we're trying to make, right? Like the fact that if you're looking at this as a whole, this won't even like relatively count as like a check mark or anything on your resume. Like it just doesn't really make any sense to be playing these games. And it is unfortunate for the losing side a lot of the times because I feel like it's more common than not that like they'll probably sustain an injury because of the fact that they're playing two different brands of football. Genuinely, like the way that the guys are hitting at the FBS level, especially at the top level, is completely different than what they're used to.
And yeah, I didn't want to bring it up too much, and I know we're going to move on to some of the like other stuff that happened last week, but maybe North Carolina A&T, and I don't think that this is some sort of like hot take, but maybe if they do actually just simply play another HBCU or they play a team in the FCS, they don't lose all three quarterbacks because the difference in the line play is also the big part.
Mm-hmm.
Skill guys come from every school, but you don't have a ton of offensive linemen or defensive linemen coming from the FCS level, or at least you don't have as many by like, and it's like a major wide margin when you compare them to some of the really top or upper echelon teams in college football, P4 programs. Like it's just not even close. That's where the brand of football really comes in. I don't know how those injuries happened specifically. I don't know if it was just like, they rushed 4 and they got to the QB just way too many times. But like that is a big point that I don't want to ever sound like, just being a wuss out here, but like it is a slightly a player safety concern, they got to call up the dogs at a certain point, right? Like, I mean, it is a little bit much.
Yeah, and then the disparity of those offensive and defensive lines makes for those injuries, right? Like the fact that it's like an FCS offensive line going against a Power 5 defensive line means that like the running back or quarterback has a very much higher percentage chance of getting injured. And it is just unfortunate, but I understand where the benefit is for both teams. And it does unfortunately sound like we're like kind of like reading it a little bit in too much into it, but it just is unfortunate, and it makes weeks like this one just essentially unwatchable. Like even if you are a fan of those teams, like I'm not turning on Miami Bethune Cookman for like the whole game. I watched the majority of the game, but it's just like you're never going to lose that game, and also it's just like not that enjoyable to watch because by the third quarter you're sending in all your third and fourth string players.
Yeah, and for a sport that I think is almost at like a semi-professional level, it does feel like a little bit unprofessional or inappropriate to have those type of games. And yeah, maybe we're reading too much into it. Like these schools get money. It is what it is. And you have the chance, like an amazing upset that will live on forever, like App State over Michigan when App State was back in the FCS level and they were one of the better teams at FCS. Like you have the chance for that. You have the chance for a Cinderella story. It is week to week. They put on the cleats just like you do, right? Like that's probably what they're saying in the locker room. They put on the jersey just the same way, bro. So that is what it is. And another point before we get out, like there were so many crazy performances that happened too that people don't really notice because they don't really pay too much attention to these games. As you mentioned, sometimes teams don't or like fans of teams don't really all tune in all the time. You might tune in just for fun to see them blow out some random team. But like there were some running back performances this week that were mind boggling, literally Madden and NCAA football type of stats, like 5 rushes for 140 yards. The UCF, one of their guys had 250 all purpose yards, like on like a handful of touches. And they weren't the only ones. Like there were multiple performances from running backs and then obviously from receivers. And they call off the dogs eventually, but these are guys who, if they rushed the ball 15 times, would have had 300 yards. And that's
100%.
unbelievable. That's not
Yeah.
football.
And then you just look at like stuff on social media, like or just in general, like the Grambling State or head coach had a press conference before the game, and he was just like, "Yeah, we know what's going to happen." Like he literally just admitted, like he was, and they do know what's going to happen because there's just not really a chance. Like you're playing the number 1 team in the nation, you're Grambling State. Unfortunately, you're going to have to look ahead to next week.
I think eventually these games are gonna go. I mean, they're gonna be gone eventually.
Hopefully.
I don't know when, but maybe 15 years from now, there's not going to be as many teams playing it.